Hi everyone, and welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. I'm Gary Tucker, and today I'm in my studio as every day and thinking about you all, hoping you're all safe and sound, taking care of your family and loved ones. That's all we can do at this time. Before I start, I want to talk about a subject that a student brought up to me recently, which was she felt she was feeling depressed because she wasn't, in her eyes, she wasn't progressing. And I thought about that, and I've thought about that before, and I realize it's a common challenge that the artist has, and it's a difficult time. So I have a remedy, at least for myself, if I feel that I'm not progressing, if I feel that my work is descending rather than ascending. I take a minute and I look back at slides or images of the work that I've been doing. And it's amazing how I've forgotten certain pieces, and seeing those again reminds me that that I'm doing good work, makes me feel good about myself again. So I'm going to start this video with just a little reflection of the recent work that I've done from my trip to Italy this past September. And I want to dedicate it to the students and the citizens who are struggling to regain their feet in Italy. And my heart goes out to you. This is a study of the Campo San Barnaba. As you can see, it's done in black and white, and as you can feel, it's got a bit of a mood to it. The mood that I'm trying to capture is that of dawn, of the light that's just about to fall into the city and illuminate and give a feeling of joy to all of us. And I extend this work into a small color study. And the demonstration today will be focused on this piece. Okay, you can see I've got my drawing in place and I've actually started painting. I'm starting to realize a vision that I had in working with this image. The source photograph above is basically what I was seeing, and my idea is a little bit beyond that. I'd like it to be more of a sunrise, a bright sky, with a strong representation of the bell tower of San Barnaba. And so I'm taking liberties with the color and taking liberties with the image so that that might come out more clearly. And this is probably the third work that I've done along this with this focus, and the image has developed with each successive image to the point where I can start to paint and start to draw based on memory and based on what I envision. And I think this is an important mindset for the artist to have, and it's not immediate. It required me to go through a few smaller studies and arrive at a point where I feel I could improvise the subject, much as a jazz musician improvises with a knowledge of the chords, a knowledge of the timing and rhythms. but free to kind of roam around and create new passages and so on. So at this stage, what you're watching me do is create the foundation of the painting in terms of color, with a strong focus on the upper third of the painting where I plan to place the bell tower. The lower 2/3 of the painting, my vision is that this will be a more subdued, very quiet area wrapped in blue, with figures kind of emerging out of a mist and directed at a sort of morning activity. They're kind of moving through the scene, crossing the bridge. And what I want to create in this image is a feeling of that, just the beginning of the day when people are starting to open their doors or starting to move towards the market. It's quiet, you can hear the steps on the stones, and the sky is really the star of the show. Well, the painting has had a chance to dry, and the application you see me putting on now is on dry paper, and it's favoring a bluer gray. The colors I'm using are cobalt blue, cadmium orange red, and yellow ochre. You can find more information about the materials in this painting, the paper, the brushes, colors, in the description below, and I recommend you have a look at that so that you can see these materials. Also, there's a link to a PDF file that describes my working thoughts and describes the process in a little more detail. And in this second go, I'm building some very hard edges into the scene. The first layer was very soft. Everything was wet into wet and sort of gradual transitions. Now I'm able to utilize the dry paper and create some hard edges. And I especially want to do that up above where we see the bell tower. I think where we see the yellow light coming through the three little windows where the bells are resting is an important focus point for me. And it's a place where I feel the morning light is really presenting itself. So I work towards that. I start on the left side with a bit more blue. As I'm coming to the bell tower, I'm using a bit more of that cad orange red and a little bit of burnt sienna to give it a stronger presence. A smaller brush. It is a small painting. This is a little unusual for me to work this small, but I wanted to kind of finalize the concept before I moved to a bigger piece, and this satisfied me, so I never really ended up developing a larger image. In any case, you can see the bell tower coming into play and how it joins to the buildings below, to the left and right. It's almost one continuous shape, and this is very much in harmony with the type of scene that we see in this sort of light. The scene is backlit and everything is kind of joined and of a similar lightness or darkness below. Well, as I mentioned, the reference, the photographic reference, is probably hard for anyone to see or to connect to the image that I'm building now, but perhaps this study that you see in the upper right-hand side is a better way to kind of determine why I'm doing the sort of color work and the sort of tonal work that I'm doing now. I did this prior to doing this painting. I did several actually to acquaint myself with the scene and to experiment with different tonal scenarios before moving to the color piece. And I do this quite often. Number one, I enjoy it. And I enjoy it because it's such a creative and revealing process. And I can recommend that to everyone who's working with watercolor to take some small sheets This particular painting is no bigger than 9 by 12. And do some studies and get to know your subject through doing these studies, and also allow yourself to experiment with the image. Go beyond what the photograph is showing you or what your motif is showing you, and bring up sort of the imagination that you feel in looking at the scene. That was very much what happened in this process, and the tonal study led to this color work. And I feel that the two have a very close union, and it was easier for me to see the subject on the paper before painting it after having done this tonal study. So I can really recommend that to everyone. I won't say don't, but if your painting takes several tries or several iterations, it's actually to your benefit as an artist. It really stimulates your artistic growth, and it's sure, it's time consuming, and sometimes it's a frustrating ordeal, but the results, the benefits of that are just, you can't put a price on it, because you discover things you never would have expected, and those things lead to really imaginative paintings. Today's work is not a classic, but it does involve a lot of the imaginative process that I go through, and I think when you compare that to the original image and see the result, you can see that too. Now the painting is dried once again because I want to put in some stronger darks. These final darks are going to be in the figures that are moving through the scene, crossing the bridge, one of the bullocks, an awning, small things, and you notice that they're not super dark related to the rest of the picture. I'm purposely keeping it as a dark mid-tone because I don't want the attraction to be in these figures. I want the attraction to remain with the bell tower as it's rising into that bright sky. So once my main subject is set, once my center of interest is set, in this case the bell tower, when I'm placing other elements, and these elements can be of importance, for example, the figures help to give the scene its scale, also to create a sort of believability that this is a neighborhood, that there's things going on here. I try to relate them all to the main subject. In other words, it's a matter of balancing. And I'm using the same colors to create these figures. I'm just using less water. So I'm mixing the burnt sienna or the cad red-orange with the cobalt blue, and very little water. And that's why they are appearing darker against the background. And the figures themselves are placed sort of just out of my head. Their position is helpful to show a dark figure on top of the bridge, crossing the bridge against that light blue is helpful to, number one, give it scale, and to push back a little bit against the background. So these things are added and kind of adjusted on the fly so that they create a sort of spontaneity, a spontaneous feel result in the painting. And I'll make adjustments while the painting is still wet, adding a bit of brighter color to the figures, adding detail, and so on. But the detail, which I'm putting some small touches now, is added towards the end to really solidify and accent the larger shapes, the larger passages. I'm using a bit of body color. This is some white mixed in with yellow to the shoulders and upward facing surfaces, so that the light is carried below, this bright light in the sky we feel it coming down and striking some of the objects below. And that's important. Still, the main figures, the figures walking through the scene, are rather more like shadows and almost imperceptible until our eyes can focus on them. And the main subject remains the bell tower. Another detail that I like to add that helps to create depth and perspective is the pavers. And of course, in a place like Venice, where there's so much masonry everywhere you look, and not only the buildings but the bridges and the sidewalks, everything is made of stone. It's a great opportunity to create a decorative feel, and the lines that you see me placing now are actually creating a sense of perspective. They also make the shadows feel more transparent, so I've got some strong reasons to include these. Well, this is the finished painting, and I believe you can see how the underpainting is coming through. All those warm colors that were placed in the beginning are glowing through the blues. The shadows are strong, and the overall feeling is rather somber, except for that luminous area in the sky. So the color plan and the tonal plan worked out in this piece, and were largely inspired by that small tonal piece that you saw towards the beginning. Well, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for visiting me in my studio. I'll be exploring dawn in the next few paintings, so I hope you'll join me. Until then, stay inside, care for the people around you, and take care of yourself as well.